Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Co-Founder Best Practices. My name is Michelle Eisenberg, and I am a program assistant at the Nasdaq Entrepreneurial Center. And for those of you who may not know, the Nasdaq Center is a nonprofit building a better path for entrepreneurs worldwide by improving inclusion, access, and knowledge in entrepreneurship. So as you will see in the chat in a moment, the Nasdaq Center provides programs, resources, and exceptional mentorship to entrepreneurs across all races, industries, and geographies. So definitely make sure to check out those links and resources in the chat. And then just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First, let us know where you are dialing in from in the chat. We always love to connect. And second, we are going to open up for live Q&A at the end of the session. So please make sure to submit your questions for us in that Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the presentation, and we will try our best to get to all of them. And of course, none of what we do could be possible at the center without all of the amazing support from our sponsors, including Nasdaq, Lehigh University, BMO, Airbnb, KPMG, Wilson Sonsini, Woodruff Sawyer, Microsoft Entrepreneurship for Positive Impact, BPM, and HubSpot for Startups. We are humbled by their contributions and hope you are grateful too. And so before we get started, we always like to launch a couple polls just to step back, see how everyone in the room is doing today. This one is going to ask, how are you feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? I'll give it just a couple moments for everyone to submit a response here. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Just another moment. All right, I'm going to end this poll, share these results. Looks like optimism is in the lead. We always love to see that, but definitely have some feelings of surviving in the audience. Hopefully some of our conversation will help address those feelings a little bit. So I'm going to stop sharing this poll and launch that second poll. What is keeping you up at night? Finance, sales, marketing, scale, pivot, team, or surviving? And this one just tells us a little bit more about your current entrepreneurial needs so we can continue to provide relevant content to all of you. Awesome. We got folks from Texas, Arizona, Florida. Welcome, welcome, everyone. All right, I'm going to end this poll and share these results. All right, looks like finance is taking the lead today, but we got needs all across the board. So thank you so much for participating. This is super helpful. We're going to stop sharing this poll, and without any further delay, please join me in giving the warmest welcome to our two special guests, James Oliver Jr. and Caleb Martinez, co-founders at Kabila. James, it is so wonderful to have you back. And Caleb, welcome. It's amazing to have you here joining us today. So I'm super excited for this conversation.
We're delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah,
Awesome.
super excited. Yeah.
And so I guess to just get started, maybe each of you could give like a 30-second intro of like who you are and, you know, the work that you're doing at Kabila. And James, maybe we could start with you.
Sure. So I'm James Oliver Jr. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Kabila. I'm a 3-time founder, Techstars alum. And, we're working on Kabila because, we know that founding teams of more than one gender, race, ethnicity give investors a 30% greater return. So we're just trying to, create an app to help co-founders help founders find a co-founder focused on inclusion. A lot of F's there. Sorry.
Yeah.
Caleb Martinez, CTO, co-founder of Kabila. Honestly, just love connecting people to kind of get their dreams going. So super excited about it. So.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. And we're here to talk about co-founders, of course. So I guess just to kick us off, what are some reasons why an entrepreneur who does not currently have a co-founder might consider seeking one? And what are some reasons that make it so difficult to find the right co-founder and maintain a strong relationship long term?
Caleb, you want to tackle that? Or you want me to do it?
Well, I'll start off by saying, founder life is not easy. It's super hard. It's kind of like wartime. Your brain's just always in torment over something, and then being able to look over someone in the trenches and be like, "Yeah, you're right there with me, man." It just like really uplifts your spirit. It really does. Yeah.
Yeah, I second that. And look, not everybody needs a co-founder. Not everybody wants a co-founder, but there's some instances where if you're trying to get investment, if you're trying to get into a premier accelerator like Y Combinator or like Techstars, or if you're trying to get capital from significant angel investors or VCs, they're going to want to see a team. And in earliest stages, typically, a lot of founders don't have capital to pay teammates, so they need a co-founder to do that. So, I mean, that's another important reason why you might want a co-founder.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess for those who are kind of, in that process of searching for a co-founder, we know things like, values and vision are really important to finding the right co-founder and making sure that you're aligned in those areas. So, James, could you maybe talk a little bit about values in particular and how entrepreneurs can ensure that a potential co-founder is someone they can trust, who will be fully committed and consistently show up in the ways that they're needed?
Yeah, first I'll say it takes time to build trust. It's not, it's like, to me, finding a co-founder is like finding a spouse, right? You just got married. You got married 2 days after I got married, and I just learned. And it's hard. I mean, and even when you go through all that and you make the decision to get married, 50% of those don't work out, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard. It takes time to build trust. I think in terms of the values, you have to talk, right? Yeah. And as you work with people over time, their values unfold. Like this is old expression, I can't hear what you're saying because of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Right. So people will say one thing and do something else. So it takes time to build trust, but it's important to at least have those conversations around what values are as a starting point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Caleb, did you have anything to add, or kind of on the same page?
Yeah. I mean, it's baby steps, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's hard because what one person is seeing about a startup and another person is seeing, it may not correlate, and you got to get those visions to line correctly to keep moving forward. So.
Mm-hmm. And just like kind of think like, what are some ways that entrepreneurs can kind of, adjust to the inevitable changes that will come with the market, with their customers, with, their own business and maybe their co-founder's vision and, how different factors might impact the way that those values evolve. How do you kind of approach that as you kind of, see those changes happening in front of you?
You want to get that one, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's belief, right? So if we're going through hard times, but we're believing ourselves, but we've done it a couple of times before. So if we execute at a high level, then that belief kind of gets ingrained in us, and then we take on anything that we can are able to that comes up. Right. So again, it's taking those baby steps because it's hard. It's dating, and be able to distill that down to a first coffee date or a first meeting date. It's just really it's hard. It really is hard.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yep.
And so, when thinking more about the vision aspect and kind of making sure that you're aligned in that area, how does I know these are kind of basic terms, but how do these concepts, what is the different impact that making sure that you're aligned in your vision has from maybe the values that you hold as an individual? Because the vision is kind of associated with the business itself. And so why does it matter how they define success? And what do these things tell you about whether or not they would make a good partner long term?
Well, it's because it will affect the decisions that you want to make, right? So if I want to build a venture scalable business, which we do, which means we want to get to $100 million in revenue and, exit for, 2 to 3 or 5x multiple, whatever that is based on your industry. But somebody wants to build a nice lifestyle business. I mean, how you move to get to those different outcomes, it may be diametrically opposed, and it's going to create friction and a lot of tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and Caleb, did you have anything to add before I kind of touched on that?
Yeah. I mean, and also like I feel like so those decisions and those values, or even like you're talking about lifestyle versus VC backable, it starts going into like a one kind of like cone where everything gets all the decisions are made based off of that. So even if it's like values or vision or how you want to impact the world, those all derive from your values. So the way you hold a door for someone, it means the way that you want to impact someone else in their life, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I just wanted to touch on like the decision making aspect that you mentioned, James, a little bit more because I think that's so important. And if you're going from being a solopreneur to having a co-founder, the process of decision making, just in general, as it relates to your business and strategic goals, is going to change. So, how might a solopreneur who's kind of entering into this kind of co-founder relationship, think about establishing, maybe a framework or just approaching decision making as a team versus as more siloed individuals?
So I'm sorry, someone who's a solopreneur.
So like just someone who is, not necessarily having a founder at this exact moment, but is looking for one, and kind of entering into that relationship for the first time, but has kind of been doing things on their own beforehand.
Yeah, I think it's like it's being single versus being married, back to the marriage analogy. Like if there's certain things you can do if you're single, but if you want to go out and stay out all hours of the night every day, and that's not going to work if you're married, right? So it's just different accommodations you're going to need to be willing to make, or maybe you should just stay single. I'm just saying, if you don't want to do that, right?
Well, and also for me, like some of the final decisions, like again, like me and James will go back and forth about certain things. And sometimes I'm like, all right, he's the CEO, I'm gonna listen to him. It's just some type of the hierarchy. Like it just is the way it is. Now, things that have been flow, like you gotta have that push, that yin and yang, or yin and yang.
Well,
Yeah.
well, also, Caleb, so that's a good point. Like you're the CTO. When it comes to dev stuff, I stay in my lane.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know nothing about that.
Yeah.
And don't want to, quite honestly, right?
Yeah. So I think that kind of like speaks to like you to a certain extent are looking for someone who can kind of you fill each other's gaps, and you can pick up where the other person maybe has strong suits in other areas, which I think can be really valuable.
Well, look, the skills should be complementary at the early stages, I think, because everybody's got to be doing all the things, right? So
Yeah.
to the extent that, people complement each other, we can get all the things done without one person having to do all the things.
Right. So thinking about the structure, we actually have someone kind of asking about this a little bit. I want to kind of jump to, kind of like the logistics of the co-founder relationship and equity allocation. And so, in what ways can equity allocation impact the relationship between co-founders, and what strategies or tools might entrepreneurs leverage to determine a fair equity allocation with their co-founder and the help of legal counsel, which I'll touch on in later.
Yeah. So I just Googled, so Gust, I'm dropping this in the chat right here, Gust, Gust. They have a really great co-founder equity splitting tool. I would recommend taking a look at that. And their tool is actually, they take a different approach from the approach that we took. Because, we think early on, if it's just getting started and everybody's equally yoked, meaning we're all going to be spending the same amount of time on it, just split the equity evenly to avoid any hard feelings. But Gus takes a different approach. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that tool I just dropped in the chat. It's cofounders.gust.com and have that conversation with your potential co-founder, I think.
Yeah. I think one of the big things too that we did was the vesting schedule. Like I really like that because it protects everyone. Like at the same time, if one of us left for other reasons that, maybe we decided that wasn't our heart into it, then we're not feeling bad because we're not leaving a big piece of the pie on the table for someone else, right? And on the other hand, like if it doesn't work out, then you can just separate your ways and the company's still going.
Yeah, I mean, look, we had to part ways with one of our co-founders, when we came back from Techstars, and at that point, none of us had vested equity. So, like, if somebody, splits after a short amount of time, you don't want them walking away with, 25% of your company. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? You're still going to need that equity down the line to hire and retain talented employees.
And just for those who may not have context, can you just briefly explain like what is a vesting schedule, and like you kind of explain like the benefits, but what exactly is that, and what can happen if you don't have one in place?
You want to tackle any of that, Caleb? I can address it if you want.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Okay. So basically that means that everybody accrues equity over time, and it's a cliff. Like, I think our equity cliff is 1 year. So everybody accrues, a certain percentage on a pro rata basis. Let's say, you own a third of the company over 3 years. I think our vesting is 3 years. I can't remember, but assume it's 3 years. It's 11% you accrue every year. But if you leave within the first year, the equity that you accrued, you get nothing. So that's the way that works. And the reason that matters is because, like we just said, you still need that equity to hire and retain talented employees. Like when my first startup, Remontage, I had a bad attorney. This is why it's so important to have a good attorney. It was an LLC, and I brought somebody on, and we had a partnership agreement. There was no vesting schedule or equity cliff. So this guy had all this equity. It was my idea. Like, I spent all of my money to build a prototype. He came on as a co-founder. He decided he didn't want to do it anymore, and I had to buy him out of my startup because I had a terrible attorney. Right. So make sure you get a good attorney who understands how this, the startup game is played, and you have a vesting schedule with a cliff, please.
Yeah. Caleb, anything you wanted to add? Or
no, I mean, cliffs are the way to go. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. So I want to dive a little bit more into the importance of legal counsel and finding someone reliable. So how else can that kind of benefit your co-founder relationship, and even the business itself, to kind of have that representation in place long term?
Look, I mean, if you're going to take on investment capital, there will be due diligence. And if you're not buttoned up legally, you're not going to get a significant check from an experienced investor. I won't say you won't get a check from anybody, because it's not necessarily true, but you got to be buttoned up legally. So you have to have a good attorney. And you get what you pay for in a lot of cases, I would say.
And for the relationship part, being protected on what you're putting your heart and soul in, it just makes everyone feel better. For me, it does anyway. And so it's not worried. There's no worry where I can just keep going and keep doing what I need to do. Yeah.
I think that's really great. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of at this early stage are kind of like figuring out like what is a need and what is a nice to have, and understanding that is really so significant in maintaining that strong co-founder relationship, and just kind of mitigating risk overall. So I think that's really great. So kind of switching gears a little bit, for those who kind of are in this co-founder relationship, or entering into one, and approaching those interactions with your co-founder on a day-to-day basis, what kinds of safeguards can entrepreneurs apply to the way they communicate and just generally interact to avoid unnecessary conflict with their co-founder?
Safeguards? Caleb.
Well, yeah, I got you. Yeah.
No, what's that? I don't know.
So pretty much, when you have a 9 to 5, like everything is supposed to happen to 9 to 5. So people understand that. When you start up founder life, like it's happening 24/7.
Yeah.
So putting in some times like, hey, you can Slack me, email me, text me all day long, or 9 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever that is. 7 o'clock is my cutoff time, whatever that is. No weekends, whatever. That's fine. Like those are my safeguards. Other than that, do not text me all these times. Now, if
Hmm.
it's super emergency, obviously you're gonna have to do that because emergency, you gotta put fires out. But
Hmm.
sometimes you do need those safeguards to like also like for your mental health, just to be able to relax sometimes, not always be on the wire. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's more boundaries, not safeguards. I
Yeah.
would think
Yeah,
about it.
but I guess also just like thinking about like when there are situations where you may not agree on a significant decision, kind of just like how to manage those communications to avoid long-term conflict.
I think transparency is key.
Yeah.
Transparency, empathy, listening.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
we
use
did have this one.
active list.
We had this one rule that if we were in the middle of a heated discussion, that we'd all gonna take 5 minutes and then come back to the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
During text time. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a different perspective possibly than many people on, that kind of tension. I describe as kind of creative tension. And actually, I like it because I think when we get done, we end up with a much better result. Like creative tension, I think is great.
Mhm.
It's also egos, right? So if people leave their egos at the door, they
Yeah,
can like you can work to the best goal possible.
right. Like
Yeah.
who has all the right answers? I don't.
Right.
I
Right.
got
Yeah.
lots of strong opinions loosely held.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really great. And kind of like we were talking about before, like you're bringing someone in to like kind of fill the gaps in a way. And so like you're not necessarily looking for someone who's going to agree with every single thing that you think. Like that's not the point of having
No,
a
it's not
founder.
at all.
Yeah.
And that's why you want to have diverse members on your team, right? Diverse backgrounds, diversity of thought and opinion. It just leads to a better result at the end of the day, every single time, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so I think we kind of touched on this a little bit, or I think Caleb, maybe you mentioned this, but how can like implementing regular check-ins impact the entrepreneur and the co-founder, as individuals and their relationship together in the business itself? And not only kind of check-ins with each other, but check-ins with team members potentially if that's something that applies to your business. But like what kinds of questions might entrepreneurs ask during these conversations to kind of gauge a pulse on how their co-founder and possibly other team members are doing personally and professionally, and hopefully kind of gain insight into insight that would impact the way you subsequently show up to those relationships.
I think it's simple. How you doing? I mean, Caleb asked me that last week. I was like, I'm tired.
It's also like, the other person has to be transparent, right? And like you gotta learn how to open up to these people because you gotta tell them what's going on. If I
Mhm.
disappear for a week, and James doesn't know that, like, he's calling my mom, he's calling my family.
Yeah.
he needs to know what's going on. Otherwise, like, just disappeared. Like, so definitely like both sides. You gotta ask the question and you gotta be open to answering it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, you got to be exactly. I mean, vulnerability. You got to be secure enough to be vulnerable. Like he's, how you doing? I'm tired. Like that's a vulnerable thing to say.
Yeah.
But
And
but I
also,
trust. But I trust him.
yeah. And James has pushed me before. He's like, yeah, what's going on? Like, I know something's going on. Like, tell me about it. Like, yeah. So maybe that's like, it's also pressing a little bit too, just so people will start revealing some things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs in our community, especially those who are kind of just like doing a lot of the work and playing, wearing multiple hats, it can feel difficult to kind of take that time to acknowledge, those difficult moments or things that you're struggling with, whether it's with the business or otherwise. And I totally agree that kind of taking the time to acknowledge those things can really enhance that relationship. I think that's great. So we also kind of touched on transparency a little bit, and obviously transparency is important. And kind of just thinking about for those who might kind of struggle with, taking that time and really acknowledging like the things that are going on, that they're noticing with the business or that they're noticing with themselves or the co-founder. How can you practice kind of active transparency with your co-founder on a day-to-day basis? Is it just kind of asking, how are you doing? Or how can you really find out, the things that you need to know to keep the business going and growing?
I think transparency is part of our ethos with,
Yeah.
with Caleb and I. And it's not just, hey, how's it going? It's also, everybody has access to the Google Workspace, the Calendly account, the bank accounts, the bookkeeping accounts. Like everybody's an admin. Like it's all transparent.
Mhm.
If I need to pay myself a little extra this week. Hey, Kayla, I need to do this. Is that cool? Don't just go do that, right?
Right.
That's what we do. So it's part of the ethos of our what we do at Kabila, and like putting those systems in place that facilitate transparency. I think help. So when it's just all transparent all the time, I think makes it easy to simply be transparent.
Yeah. Yeah, that really goes back to kind of the values that we were talking about earlier. Like that's just a part of who you are as a business, as a co-founder team.
Yeah,
It's easy to do that, especially when you kind of implement that early on. So I love that.
totally.
Yeah.
Caleb,
Yeah. One of the things that before James, I was meeting with people regularly, just trying to like see what I want to do. And
sure.
pretty much like the reason why I kept talking to James was because the first meeting we had was super transparent. I mean, just he throwing all out on the table.
Really? What did I say?
Just everything. You were just like, just like good and bad. Here we at with things. Like this is where I want to go with things. This is the mission vision. Like, and just like telling me like who you were. Like it helped out a lot. And then when he was like transparent about the conversations you were having with investors,
Oh yeah.
they're like, no, they didn't say nothing. Like, or it was a bad call or good call. Or even when you were talking to the MD at Techstars, you were like, yeah, he said, split equity very evenly and all that stuff. So that was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Transparency matters,
Yes.
And it breeds security, right? People feel secure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it also kind of breeds empathy, kind of as we were saying before. It gives people a chance to be like, hey, I know exactly what you mean. I can relate to that. And kind of, build camaraderie from that empathy. So I think that's awesome. So, thinking a little bit more about empathy, what are some ways that entrepreneurs can kind of practice that, on a day-to-day basis and, really make sure that they are seeing their co-founder for everything that is going on, even when there's so much else to kind of, keep up and focus on with the business itself?
I'll take a stab at that, Caleb, if you don't mind. I think, going back to the whole relationship analogy, as I said, I have tons of strong opinions, loosely held. And, I have these ideas about what it takes to have a successful marriage. And one of them is, I think it's more selflessness, more mutual respect and consideration, and more empathy. Empathy, that's not necessarily an easy thing for people to be able to practice, especially in our society we're all so selfish, right? But like, so my wife and I, we've been doing couples therapy since before we got married a couple weeks ago, and it's been great. And we had this one week where we were practicing empathy, trying to figure out how can we be more empathetic to the other person and understanding what empathy is. And like, she asked me, we were in Target, and she asked me, what does empathy look like to you, kind of question, or how, and I had no idea. Like, honestly, I didn't know like how I didn't know, right? So it's not an easy answer to that question, I don't think. But at the end of the day, it's like putting yourself in somebody's shoes. It's like if somebody's down in the well, like you're down in the well with them, in the ditch with them, right? And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do. But I think maybe it starts with just practicing. And also, like you said, Caleb, egos aside, not thinking that, you're better than the other person. Like everybody has something to contribute. I mean, I would start with some of that. Your thoughts, Caleb? I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, I mean, again, like this is a hard one. I mean, you got to make sure before the relationship start, making sure that's the right person, right? And then when you're down in the trenches, sometimes like even like a little text, like "Yo, how you doing today?" Or how's your family? And just like getting things outside of your own space and understanding that there's more to life than just like these trenches that you're in right this second.
Yeah, I mean, like going out for tacos and beer is like that's the greatest thing sometimes, right? Because we're just kicking it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's really great, and kind of hopefully finding someone that you can support both personally and professionally, and they can do the same for you. And just I love that, recognizing that you're not just the founder, you are a human being outside, you're potentially a mother, a father, whoever you are. So those things are important to recognize too. I love that. So kind of to round us out here, I want to quickly touch on the role of accountability, and the different ways that can look between co-founders. So, thinking about empathy, how might entrepreneurs kind of strike a balance, between showing empathy when their co-founder makes a mistake, while also like holding them accountable for their roles and responsibilities? Like, where do you kind of draw the line there?
Caleb, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, so again, like a little back earlier, I was like talking about the history of execution. Like if they're executing on a high level and they mess up one day, that's totally okay. Like, yeah, it happens. We're humans, right? On the other hand, if they're continually messing up on stuff, it depends what they're what they look like in the past. Then maybe that's like a different conversation, right? Maybe that's not the best thing you're doing right now. Maybe we can try to see if either I can do it or someone else can do it, right? So allocating resources the right way, and then making sure that person, is at a high level.
Yeah. And don't gaslight me, man. That just nothing like infuriates me more than that. Like we all make mistakes. And I mean, I think I told you the story before. Maybe I didn't. About how we were in Techstars, and there was just like a week. I was just like crap in the bed. I felt like that whole week. And we were under like intense pressure, man. Like going through Techstars is like drinking from a fire hose. And, I was messing up with like investor emails, and, I messed up our pitch deck for demo day. And it's like, damn. It's like, but I was like in terms of accountability, I owned up to it. It was like, yo, I did this. It's my bad. Right. Because they knew I messed up. But if they're like, yo, you messing up, and I'm like, you messing up. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Don't gaslight me. So I think accountability starts with the individual.
Yeah.
Like Caleb holds himself accountable. I hold myself accountable. Right. So if I'm holding myself accountable, then and if he's holding himself accountable, I figure it all works out.
No, definitely. If one of us comes to the table with the problem, like, hey, like I messed up here, it's totally different conversation than someone else figuring out and like, what is this,
Yeah. And you're acting like it's not a problem. It's like, and it's something that we talked about, because we had some of those problems too before with some other folks. Like we had some issues. We talked about it as a team. We said we were going to do this, and then it pops back up, and then they're making excuses. Oh no, we didn't say that. Like, wait, what? Scram.
Yeah.
Beat it, yo. I got time for that. I don't have time for it.
I mean, that goes back to like just the transparency.
It's integrity, it's transparency, it's like honesty, right? Values. Like all this stuff is connected. And again, just think of it like a relationship. Would you tolerate that in a relationship with a significant other? Probably not. You shouldn't.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, no, I think this is great. And these things really do all connect. And there's a lot of really important points here for entrepreneurs in the audience to think about. And we do have some questions coming in live from the audience. So if you are here and you have a question for James and Caleb, definitely make sure to drop that in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many as possible. So let me just see here. We have one person kind of asking, I've invested in and advised numerous tech startups over the last 10 years. I enjoy it immensely. Yet one area that I repeatedly find hard to offer advice on is this: when in early pre-funding stage, how to decide what person we might bring on board and that should qualify as co-founder or employee. And kind of how you make that determination that kind of, someone should be part of the team or someone should be the co-founder.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that co-founder equity split from Gus, that tool I put in there, might help with some of that. I'm sorry.
I think it's like vision, right? I mean, you're talking about the values and the vision, and that kind of rolls up into like someone being there longer than an early employee. I mean, yeah, giving equity to an early employee, that's fine. But a co-founder is completely different. You want them also skills, investor relations. It kind of goes with the tool. Like if they have some of those things that checks those boxes, it helps you make those decisions a little bit better on if they're an early employee versus a co-founder.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. Absolutely. James, anything else you want to add? Or?
Yeah. So the last part of the question was how you inspire. Look, the CEO's job is to sell, right? If the CEO can't inspire somebody to come work with her or him, yeah, it's probably not going to be good for him. Just saying, like, if you can't find some people that, participate and get involved in some meaningful capacity to move things forward, I mean, how are you going to inspire people to buy? Like, how are you going to inspire investors to invest? Like, how are you going to do any of that?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that kind of speaks towards like having the confidence. It's like they won't believe in you if you don't believe in it, and that's really great. I love it.
100%. Yeah, here's that co-founder actually tool again, because somebody was asking that first question about that. Hopefully, I think that answers that question. And also, before we forget, everybody on the call, we're going to make, so we have a co-founder matching app. It's in the App Store for Google Play and Apple. So we're going to offer 50 premium subscriptions to the app for a year. It's free to create a profile, but we're going to send out a type form and with instructions on how to do that. The first 50 people respond, we'll let them get premium access to the app for a year. So stand by for that. Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, definitely stick around, and we'll also share that as well. So kind of thinking about maybe someone who has not had a great experience with their accountant or their lawyer, and kind of those supporting roles for the co-founder relationship. I know maybe as one of you have had experience or have mentioned, but like, could you maybe like speak to an experience where you kind of like learned any lessons from a relationship that didn't really work out the way you had hoped it would, and what insights you kind of brought into the next relationship from that one that didn't really work out so well?
From an attorney or an accountant?
Yeah, or just like anyone who is kind of a supporting role to that co-founder relationship.
Yeah, I think the whole vesting with a cliff helps address some of that.
Yeah.
Right up front. If you say you're going to do X, Y, Z, and I gave you equity and you don't deliver over whatever agreed upon time, typically I think a year is for the cliff. You get nothing. Just saying. That makes that very easy.
Yeah, Caleb, anything you wanted to add there?
Or just on the other end of that too, one time I was working with a startup and I was an early employee there, and the guy kept promising me equity and never came to fruition, and that was just kind of like messed up. Yeah, So seeing the papers early and with the cliff, I was way more happier with the cliff than without seeing the papers at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, but that goes back to what I said at the top, right? I can't hear what you're saying because of what you're doing.
Yeah.
You say you're going to give me equity, but what are you doing? You haven't signed the documents to do that. So again, that goes back to values, to integrity, like all transparency, all these things, they permeate the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, no, I think that's really, really great. And so we have another question coming in here, kind of asking about, someone who's planning to join a different company, as like a co-founder, and, kind of what advice you would give, to kind of navigate that partnership, for, a business that has already been established and has been in place for a number of years, and you're kind of just coming in for the first time as like the co-leader.
I'm not sure I understand. So there's an existing business and somebody wants to come on as a co-founder of an existing business?
So more of like a partnership, like I'm planning to join a different company with the potential for a partnership as the leader of that company with the co-founder. So kind of how to navigate that relationship.
From the company standpoint or the employee
Yes,
standpoint?
from the company standpoint.
Well, like obviously they're not going to be a co-founder. If you're talking about a successful company that's been around for a while, that's an employee that gets some stock options, I would think.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you
Yeah,
take
I
that.
think that's where the confusion is. Yeah.
We're just a leadership position, really. Like,
Okay.
So a lot of co-founders or a lot of founders know that there is writing on the wall. Like once the business gets to a certain stage and a certain capacity of employees, they like step away, right? Because that's not what they got in the game for, operating and managing and doing the management of all that stuff. But I guess it's really just being careful and trying to make sure the egos stay out of the way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. And so we have a couple questions here, all related to equity allocation, and specifically asking about, if one person is working full-time and one person is working part-time, or, kind of how to kind of allocate the equity in that situation.
Yeah.
Or if you
I
have
get,
kind of like a framework for thinking about that.
well, yeah, it goes back to the last thing I dropped in the chat. Just check out that tool and that will help you have that conversation and figure out, it will tell you what percentage each person should get based on how the questions are answered.
Yeah, that tool is pretty cool. Yeah, it walks you through like, do they know investors? Are they good? Like, what skills do they have? Like, how good are they and stuff like that. So,
Yeah. This is a great one. So, and I think this kind of speaks to like just kind of knowing your strengths, but somebody's asking here, like, how do you establish your roles with the co-founder? Kind of like, how do you determine like where you're best needed within the structure of the company as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, stereotypically speaking, you need a hacker and a hustler, right? Caleb is a developer. I don't code. Caleb doesn't want to be talking to investors and all that kind of stuff. I do. So that makes it easy. Like you need somebody who knows, business development, sales, and somebody who can code. Caleb's interesting and unique because he likes to roll up his sleeves and get into some of the business stuff too, which makes it good because we have conversations about like the business impact of some of these development decisions that we will make. So that's cool.
And kind of like as a follow-up for this question, and like I'm not sure exactly like what your experience is with Kabila, but like kind of like determining who or what is the face of the company, whether it's you both as co-founders, one of you, or kind of just how you potentially navigate that decision.
Well, Caleb doesn't really like to be out there like that. Is that fair to say, Caleb?
That is fair to say. Yeah.
He doesn't. Although I do like to see him when he gets out there and mixes it up a little bit. And, You know, like it's weird. I think so. Let me ask you a question, Michelle. Do you think I'm an introvert or an extrovert?
I think you're an extrovert.
Yeah, see, most people do, but I'm actually not.
Interesting.
I actually don't really like people that much. I am, you know, I wouldn't say I'm like right in the middle. I'm probably like an introverted extrovert.
Okay.
But I derive as much pleasure. Well, engaging with people does not drain me.
Yeah.
So that's how I know I'm not an introvert.
Okay.
Right? But also, I, I could go out to an event and just sit in a corner with a glass of wine by myself
Sure.
and be just as happy,
Yeah.
you know, and not having to answer the, so what do you do questions. I'm like, really, none of your business. This is because I'm not really an extrovert, see?
Yeah.
See?
Yeah. So you definitely fall somewhere in the middle for sure.
Yeah, I'm not an extrovert. But, you know, so the fact that you think I am, that's why I'm the one doing the things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's got to do the things. So I'll do the things.
Yeah. It's just a matter of kind of, knowing who kind of wants to fill that role, who kind of can step
Yeah.
up, like have
And, you
that.
know, I'm kind of good at some of that, you know, so it's not super hard for me to do some of those things. So I do it, you know, and we've had some success with some of that stuff. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also it's like strengths, like put your strengths, know your weaknesses, and then like be able to like find other people that can also like fill out other people thing your weaknesses between the two of us. Like, so if like we wanted to go find some people that can write some good articles or do whatever, like, you know, we would go find those people. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
mhm.
absolutely. So awesome. This has been really, really a great conversation, and kind of thinking about some of the things that we've talked about today. If you each had, just one key takeaway that you wanted to leave with the audience, what would that be?
Caleb.
Take it slow, you know, whenever you meet someone that's potentially a co-founder. Be transparent and just like, you know, leave it all out there. Like, life is short and startups are hard. Enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, think about it. How would you approach your relationship with somebody you want to get serious with? You know, from a founder standpoint, like, see how well you work on some projects together, and
Mhm.
take time to do that, because you know a lot of times people will put their best foot forward and put a good face on, you know, but when the rubber meets the road and using that pressure cooker, their true selves. There's a saying that I like to repeat. You know, adversity doesn't build character; it reveals it.
Mm.
So, you know, take the time, like Caleb said, to get to know somebody, go through some things together, get in the trenches with somebody. And, you know, well, short of that, like, protect yourself. Make sure you have your everything's papered up properly. You have a vesting schedule with an equity cliff, etc.
Awesome. Well, James, Caleb, this has been such a great conversation, and thank you for just setting such a great example as a co-founder team for our entrepreneurial community. So on behalf of the Nasdaq Center and everyone here today, we're just so thankful you joined us.
Thank you for having us. And I'll send over the type form that you can send out for people if they want to use our co-founder matching app for free for a year. We'll send out a type form with instructions to do that.
Awesome. Yep. Look out for that. Really, really great opportunity. And to our audience, we would love to see you again for upcoming webinars, which you can view using that link that's going to be posted in the chat. And thank you all so much for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you back online with us soon.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.